Hello students, good morning. Today we will read the moral story. Education is important. Education is important. Let's reading practice with Radhamam. Let's start now. Let us read. Let us read the story. Let us read the story of a prince. Let us read the story of a prince who did not like study. He enjoyed playing games. His father tried a lot to explain the importance of education. His father tried a lot to explain the importance of education. He would not listen to anyone. The king announced a reward of 1,000 gold coins. The king announced a reward of 1,000 gold coins to the person who could educate his son. Many tutors came to teach him but failed. The prince had an old servant whose son named Sohan looked after the king's pigeons. The prince had an old servant whose son named Sohan looked after the king's pigeons. Sohan one day told the king that he would like to teach the prince. The king agreed as even the prince was very fond of Sohan. Sohan taught the prince how to feed and train the pigeons. The prince enjoyed it all. One day the prince asked Sohan how many pigeons they had. Sohan replied 100. One day the prince asked Sohan how many pigeons they had. Sohan replied 100. Then the prince asked, do we have more of white pigeons or the grey ones? Then the prince asked, do we have more of white pigeons or the grey ones? Sohan said, let us count them and find out. This is how Sohan taught the prince how to count. The prince then told Sohan there were 40 grey and 60 white pigeons. The prince then told Sohan there were 40 grey and 60 white pigeons. Then Sohan suggested, why don't we give them names? The prince gladly agreed. Sohan then chose names that begin with a vowels for the grey pigeons. Then he chose names that begin with a consonant for the white ones. Then he chose names that begin with a consonant for the white ones. The prince thus learned not only the alphabet, but also all the names. Then Sohan said, let us make a list of the names of all the pigeons for the king. Gradually the prince learned to write. The king was very glad to see the list of names that his son had written. Names that his son had written. See how cleverly Sohan taught the prince to read and write. See how cleverly Sohan taught the prince to read and write. Sohan was given the reward of thousands of gold coins. Sohan was given the reward of thousands of gold coins. The prince then started going to school. Slowly he developed interest in studies. And became an excellent student. So when he developed interest in studies and become an excellent student. Thought of the day: practice make a man perfect. Practice make everyone perfect. हर किसी को प्रैक्टिस क्या करती है? परफेक्ट बनाती है. थैंक यू वॉचिंग माई वीडियो. प्लीज लाइक एंड शेयर एंड सब्सक्राइब. एजुकेशन इज इम्पॉर्टेंट.